to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High, the one and only Elohim, the God of Israel. Shalom and blessings to all my brothers and sisters, my kinsmen, according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom pertain the adoption, the glory, the covenants, the giving of the law, the service of Elohim, and the promises, whose are the fathers, and of whom, as concerning the flesh, our Mashiach came, who is over all, Elohim blessed. Hope all is good and well. I want to welcome y'all to this fellowship, the Indigenous Lie. I know this is a topic that, has been resurfacing, and it's been really pertinent among our people, the Indigenous Lie. The common consensus is that so-called Black Negroes, that we are indigenous to America, that we are not quote unquote African, and that we have been here on this land, on this continent the whole time. We never left. So I want to, once again, welcome y'all to this fellowship. Also, I want to make it known that I did invite somebody to this fellowship. I don't know if they will show up or not. Hopefully they will. And this is a person who, through via Facebook, made a statement that before 1988, Black people were not African. All right. And I responded by saying that we were not Indian either. Right. Now, I understood the whole sentiment of that. Once again, the sentiment is that us believing that we're African and that we have African blood is pretty much, according to them, the deception. We are deceived by believing that, we are deceived by believing that rather we do come from a different place rather than the land that we're on now. And so I responded in that way because I was responding to that sentiment. And so I want to talk about that tonight. I'm gonna bring up some things, fair use, some videos and different things like that. And I want to address some of these different points, these different beliefs of us being indigenous. Now, of course, this is something that we've dealt with before. Y'all know where we stand on this. As I've always said before, when we're dealing with different topics, certain topics tend to come back around. Certain topics tend to resurface. And when they resurface, you see that there's always a clash in belief. This is more of a new one in terms of, where I stand, this indigenous belief. I've never heard before until recent times that we are indigenous, But one thing, I don't know if y'all remember, the brothers and I, we was, talking about this. And one of the things we said was that, in light of the 12 tribes chart, right? Because a lot of people believe in that. A lot of our people who know the truth believe in that chart. But in light of that 12 tribes chart, what would eventually happen is this belief of America being the promised land. Everybody know that the chart is false, and a lot of that chart has to do with, if you ask me, the so-called ish narrative and what they want to, portray in terms of who the people are. If they're saying that they're the Jews, right, then who are the other 11 tribes? You see what I'm saying? Now, once you start digging deep and dealing with the more intricate parts of, finding out who people are, you start to see that those other 11 tribes don't even really look like them in all actuality. right? And you have the Latter-day Saints movement, which started back in the 1800s, 1700s, leading up to now, of European people of European descent believing that they're the blood relatives and the true seed. So in dealing with this indigenous thing, man, it's resurfacing. You know, a lot of our people are talking about it. Some of y'all in the chat may believe in it. You know, may believe you have some Indian in you, and I'm not against that part. You understand? I'm not against the mixture part of it, and that's actually the bridge that I want to try to draw tonight, to try to establish an understanding of why our people are really believing that we are indigenous, right? A lot of people who believe we are indigenous, they have a problem with DNA. Excuse me. They have a problem with accepting DNA as proof, but then they'll claim that they have ancient relatives that were full-blooded, you know, this or full-blooded Creek or full-blooded Cherokee or whatever, right? Well, blood falls under the DNA bracket. There is DNA in blood, right? And so if you're going to determine if you're full-blooded anything, you have to do that by means of having your blood traced, you know. And I don't understand the mechanisms behind it, but the conclusion will determine, you know, where your blood actually comes from, you know, traced back to antiquity. You know, people have an issue with that, but I don't really see the issue when it comes to dealing with that part. But shalom once again to everybody in the chat. We got Sister Zuriya in the chat. Shalom, sis. Glad y'all could be in the fellowship. Got Sister 78 Vet. Shabbat Shalom. Good to see you, sis. As always. Miss Paula Ann. Shalom, sis. Good to see you in the chat. Who else we got? We got Golden Mass. Shalom, Golden Mass. Hope y'all doing good, man. Hope y'all had a good week. Got my love in the chat. Shibriya. Shalom. Got Brother Kadar. Resurrecting the Truth. Shalom. Good to see you, bro. Yeah, I got that link in the email. Who else we got? Forgive me, y'all. I'm just kind of scrolling through. Sister Linya, shalom, sis. Good to see you in the chat. Hope all is well. Yeah, that's about it in the chat right now, man. But good to see everybody. Hope y'all had a real good week, like I said. But I really want to interact tonight. I'm gonna put the link out there. And like I mentioned earlier, I did invite somebody to the fellowship who is on the stance that, you know, we are indigenous. So I really want to get more of that perspective. I want to challenge that perspective, you know, not out of doubt or anything, but just out of understanding. My understanding of the Indian part is that we as Negroes, to some extent, may or may have had that mixed in with us due to the geography, the history, and the backdrop of our connection with so-called Native American Indian people, right? There's a position, you know, some people may take issue with that because they'll say that, you know, there were Black people here that were, you know, a part of these tribes, or, you know, mainly these tribes, you know what I mean? And so they'll say that at some point those people became reclassified as Negroes. And if you think about that, I'm sure some of y'all may have heard that too, but if you think about that, right? Think about the vastness of time, the vastness of space, and what's not being addressed when that statement is made. A whole group of people, you telling me, were pretty much Native American, Indian, right? And then at some point they all just became reclassified. To me, that sounds like some information is missing, some details are missing. uh if y'all keep that in mind, I want to kind of get into some of that tonight. And like I say, to sort of draw a bridge and make the connection. But what I want to do real quick, just to kind of start that off, I want to go into this documentary under fair use. I'm gonna be doing a number of things tonight, so y'all bear with me. Uh, we dealt with this before. Black Slaves, Red Masters. This is a documentary that pretty much details what we're talking about, the connection of our people and the Native Americans, or so-called Indians. Um, One of the things you might hear people who take this belief, you might hear them say, the transatlantic slave trade never happened. There are no evidence of that, and they'll question that, based on the voyage, and how you gonna take this many people, millions of people, this far. And that's neither here nor there, because you know there is evidence of slave ships. All of that evidence still stands. But when you really look at this indigenous thing, right, and they say that the transatlantic slave trade never happened, that's a direct shot at not only our history and the truth of who we are, but that's a direct shot at the prophetic aspect of things. When you start dealing with the word of the Most High, and what the word of the Most High has to say about things. you know uh it's through the angle of prophecy that we're able to understand that those things relate to us. So when you say the transatlantic slave trade never happened, that's almost like saying that's blasphemy against the Most High's word, because that's how we identify with who we are. Most people like to identify with the blessings of the Most High, but the true blessing of the Most High is identifying with those curses. That's how we truly understand who we are in these last days. When you start dealing with Genesis, the 15th chapter, the 400-year prophecy, think about what that says. I'm gonna give me a second. Hold on, y'all. Think about what the 400-year prophecy is saying, right? It's saying that the Most High is saying, rather, to Abraham, and he's telling him concerning his seed or his descendants, what will befall them in the days to come, in the last days. Right? Don't believe prophecy, but they're silent on it, because at the same time, people are starting to see things ramp up, you know, and I don't see how you can believe in the 400-year prophecy and still believe that Gentiles or non-Israelite people can be saved. Right? Check this out. when you say the transatlantic slave trade never happened, when you say that, well, they won't say slavery never happened, right? But then when you look at the Native American slavery, right, how long did that last? About 40, 50 years max, you know, and then these same people had our people in slavery. We're going to look at that too. But Genesis 15, verse, I'm going to start at verse 12. It say, and when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, an heart of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. So I'm going to park right here for a second. We mentioned how they say that transatlantic slave trade never happened, right? But then the Most High himself is telling our forefather to know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. So Abraham, or Abram, right? Because he ain't been changed to Abraham yet, but he don't even have any children yet. At this particular time, he don't have any children yet. And the Most High is speaking to him concerning his seed after Abram in his old age questioned the Most High concerning having a son because his wife was barren. For the people who don't know that, he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed should be a stranger in a land that's not theirs. So if we're saying that we're indigenous to America, right, and America is what we know to be the place of judgment, right, according to this prophecy. Shalom, Torah trained kids. Good to see you in the chat. I think that's Sister Pam. Good to see you, sis. I want to get y'all's input on the indigenous thing. You know, what y'all know, what y'all was taught, what you believe, where you stand. You know, let's hear it in the chat. But if we're saying we're indigenous to America, then what does that do to what the Most High is saying here? If we're indigenous to America, then what does that do to what the Most High is telling Abram right here? Then he says, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. So quite naturally, if we're in a land that's not ours and we're being afflicted, you know, at some point we're going to want to out. We're going to want to be released and let go. But for some reason at this particular time, you know, in this awakening, there's this strong stance of our people believing that we are indigenous. Maybe I'm missing something. I see a direct conflict, a direct challenge to what the Most High is saying right here. When we say we're indigenous, when we say this is our land, right, that contradicts what the Most High is saying right here. So to make it plain, somebody's lying. Somebody's not telling the truth. They say they have proof. They say they have evidence. I want to look at some of this proof, some of this evidence that we as so-called blacks, Negroes are indigenous. We under fair use. And like I said, we're going to just kind of vibe out tonight. We're going to go through some scriptures. while this is playing, I'm gonna pull up some other passages. We're gonna pause it. We're gonna listen to some things from actual people who understand this connection of our people and Native American people who are connected to plantations, people who lived on them, people who descended from them. Not plantations, but reservations. All right. Let's try to understand this connection so that we can move forward in understanding the true history of our people. And our sojourning here, I agree. Our people may have connected, blended in. Some of that has happened throughout all of our history, wherever we went. But when it comes to the indigenous part, right, and whether this is our land or not, this is where we have a conflict between a common belief, common consensus, and what the Most High's word is saying. Say, I believe what Yah said, all other things being said is a lie. Indeed. I agree with you. Say, there is no comparison between us and the hybrids. They were told many years ago that they were not human. We are the original man. Selah. When you think about that original man, right, that goes back to Adam. And contrary, well, I ain't gonna say contrary, I'm gonna say in spite of all people coming from Adam, who is Adam traced through? Or who is traced back to Adam according to the Bible? All right. Say all come from Adam, but only one people are the Most High's people. So when you look at the scriptures, you see who those people are, and you trace that all the way back to Adam. Fair use. Let's look at some of this. Let me get some more of y'all thoughts.
The following is a News 7 Black History Special, Black Slaves, Red Masters. Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Ford. Earlier this month in our 7 Inside Reports, I took a personal journey to look at a largely unknown chapter of Black history when my ancestors and thousands of other Blacks were slaves, not of the whites, but of the Indians. Well, a lot of people responded who'd missed some of the segments and who wanted to know more about the subject. So today you'll see it all and more, and get your pencils. At the end, we'll have not a test, but an address and phone number where you can get more information.
All right, so like I said, as we watch this, I want us to kind of pay attention to details that's going to answer questions, right? Why do you have certain of our people claiming that they are full-blooded Creek, full-blooded Cherokee, full-blooded Muskogee, full-blooded Seminole, Choctaw, excuse me. Why are there certain of our people claiming to be full-blooded, whatever tribes, respect the tribe? Jeremiah 5:15, lo, I will bring a nation upon you from afar, O house of Israel, said the Lord. It is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not. It says a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation. That's peculiar. Right? Was this talking about when our people were in the land in 70 AD? Or what particular time was this talking about? But we're going to pay attention to certain details. I'm really trying to buy me some time because I'm trying to find this document. I have a document that that talks about the Native Americans enslaving our people, if I can find it. It's kind of old, so let me see. Give me a second. If I can't find it, then I got other stuff we can pull up. But I wanted this one in particular. Yeah. Y'all let me know something in the chat though while I'm doing this. Let me know some of them grandmama, I'm Indian on my grandmama's side, because that's what it was mostly when I was coming up. Everybody who claimed to be, I'm Indian on my grandmama's side, And y'all know about my little testimony, but then too, I'm still looking for it. Then too, a lot of us weren't really taught a lot about our history, a lot about, none of that, And like I said, you have a lot of our people who were connected and had those connections. No, I can't find it. Man, that was a good one too. I'm sure I have it. I'm just overlooking it because I got so many. But yeah, that's what it was mostly growing up. Indian on my grandmama's side. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. But let's get back to this. We're going to be looking at details that answer these questions. All right, fair use.
Every summer at Tahlequah, Oklahoma, the Cherokee Indians sponsor their Trail of Tears pageant, the story of how the U.S. government robbed the so-called 5 civilized tribes of their homelands in the South and moved them by force to Oklahoma. They don't tell about the thousands of blacks the tribes brought with them, their slaves.
My mammy and pappy belonged to a part Cherokee named W.P. Thompson when I was born.
The woman reading is my sister, Elaine Ford Staton, but the words are those of our great-grandmother, Phyllis Thompson Pettit, whose Georgia-born parents were brought by the Cherokees over the trail. Johnson Thompson was Phyllis's brother.
Before that, Pappy had been owned by 3 different masters. One was the rich Joe Van, who lived down at Weber's Fall, and another was Chief Lowry of the Cherokees.
My cousin, Maurice Shepard, reading the words of his great-grandfather. The interviews were conducted 52 years ago here at Fort Gibson, Oklahoma, when both my great-grandmother, Phyllis Pettit, and her brother, Johnson Thompson, were in their 80s, part of a federal writers project. Now, both of them are buried in this cemetery. But after I read their words, I was set on a mission to find out how my family became slaves of the Indians.
All right, so these are actual testimonies, actual history of our people being slaves to the Indians, right? Now we have a connection, right? The understanding is that our people were here already, right? But we see here that at some point our people were enslaved by the so-called Indian people. When you start talking about the 1400s and the 1600s, the most you have are depictions, sketches and drawings that they show of black people and looking like they or tribal somewhat, right? But then when you start to question the connection of our people, at what point did our people connect with the Native Americans or the so-called Indians, and how long was that connection? These things we have to consider when we start searching this out. How long was that connection? At what point did that connection start? Is 1619 a reality in terms of our arrival, right? If you believe the Most High's word, of course it is. There's all the evidence is there, right? We even have old documents that confirm and affirm that. So let's look at some more. We got a connection. We see that our people are slaves. How did our people become slaves, right? And this is the segment that he's actually leading into. Let's understand how this actually happened, right? How did our people become slaves to the Indians? Where were our people coming from that led to our people being slaves to the Indians? Fair use.
I learned that beginning with the administration of George Washington, it was the policy of the U.S. government to civilize the Indians by teaching them modern farming techniques.
To adopt agricultural practices that patterned after the whites. And one of those in the South was slave trade.
I don't ever talk about it very much because
Slaves of the Indians. I learned that beginning with the administration of George Washington, it was the policy of the U.S. government to civilize the Indians by teaching them modern farming techniques.
To adopt agricultural practices that patterned after the whites. And one of those in the South was slave trade.
I don't ever talk about.
So did he just in so many words say that the slave trade was an agricultural practice? So if the whites were teaching Indians to farm and cultivate land and all these different things, who was actually teaching them? Where were they getting their knowledge and understanding from? I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
My family became slaves of the Indians. I learned that beginning with the administration of George Washington, it was the policy of the U.S. government to civilize the Indians by teaching them modern farming techniques.
To adopt agricultural practices that patterned after the whites. And one of those in the South was slave trade.
I don't ever talk about it very much because I think it's a very shameful part of Cherokee history, and so I've purposely avoided involving myself in that whole issue.
While the current chief may be ashamed, at the Cherokee Museum today are slave bills of sale, including one for 3 slaves bought in 1841 by then Principal Chief John Ross. The chief and his brother Lewis were among the biggest slaveholders in the tribe. Indeed, many of my mother, Kathleen's ancestors, the Rosses, were owned by the chief's family.
They were Southerners. They adopted Southern institutions, Southern dress, Southern black slavery.
But one characteristic they did not like was Southern greed for their land. By 1830, through wars and treaties, the 5 tribes had lost most of it. Then they were all ordered to move west to Oklahoma. 4 of the tribes left, but the Cherokees took their case to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. At least they won the lawsuit. Then the man on the $20 bill stepped in.
And President Jackson essentially told the Supreme Court, you made your ruling in favor of the Cherokees, now, try to enforce it.
As president, Andrew Jackson controlled the army, so 14,000 Cherokees and 1,600 slaves were herded to Oklahoma, some groups in winter, with about a quarter of the Indians and blacks dying along the way.
You got plenty Indians.
Said Native Americans are descendants of ancient peoples who migrated from Siberia across the Bering Strait thousands of years ago. They look a bit Asian with the slant eyes. It's funny because what you mentioning right here, right? There's this documentary that talks about the Hittites, right, and how they pretty much got the same narrative. You know, they spread out to different parts of Asia. You know, then they migrated and ended up here, and how it went into the Hittite language, how it is an Indo-European language, but that's not saying it's an English language. But in terms of the writing from you know how we write from left to right, you know, that's Indo-European, that type of thing. So that's something to really think about. But they're talking about now how the 5 civilized tribes lost all of their territory and how they were forced to migrate west to Oklahoma. And along with them were the slaves that they had. And now they're going into detail about, you know, what they had to go through in terms of that migration. Fair use.
Right today, don't like Andrew Jackson in this area.
84-year-old Luther Scales, who describes himself as 1/4 black and 3/4 Indian, is president of the Coweta, Oklahoma Historical Society.
Now, did y'all hear that? I'm gonna play that again.
84-year-old Luther Scales, who describes himself as 1/4 black and 3/4 Indian, is president of the Coweta, Oklahoma Historical Society.
He got the same last name as Brother Kadar. Right? But listen to how he described himself. Listen to how he described himself. Right?
84-year-old Luther Scales, who describes himself as 1/4 black and 3/4 Indian, is president of the Coweta, Oklahoma Historical Society.
1/4 black and 3/4 Indian, which would imply what? He's mixed. So here's a gentleman himself who will attest to the fact that he is mixed, you know, 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian. So he is mixed. He would attest to that. It said the natives also, yeah, but at the same time too, a lot of our people mix with them. You know, a lot of that probably happened too, I'm sure. You know, but there was a time when this is going to get into that, you know, and he's more than likely a product of what it's going to get into. But 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian. Who's going to argue with this man and tell him that he didn't come from Africa or he doesn't have any African blood in him? Now I want y'all to look at him. All right, hold on. I want y'all to look at him. All right, he's 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian. And do y'all see him? Say they don't serve Yah, they serve bird spirit, wolf spirit, bear spirit, and shamanism. They are different people. Israel came from West Africa via transatlantic slave trade. And that's another thing, you know, when you start talking about the customs and everything, you know, part of our curse was to be scattered and serve other gods, wood and stone. Right? A lot of idolatry. But look at him. I want y'all to look at him. Look at his features and everything. He's 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian. So that means he's mostly Indian, right? Why do you have Negroes today who look like me and you saying that they don't have no African blood in them? And do y'all see him? Say he's a mud. Well, that's what a mixed is when it comes to that, right? Why do you have Negroes who look just like me? Y'all done seen me, right? I don't know if y'all want to see me right now. Let y'all see me. Y'all can see me right there. See, you got Negroes who look just like me saying I don't have no African blood in me. Do y'all see me? I don't have no African blood in me. This is what they're telling you. And look at this man. Hey, shalom, sis. Sister CC. Ain't seen you in a while. What's been going on? Praise Yah. Hope all is well. Look at you. See? There you go. Look. I ain't got no African blood in me, but he's one quarter black, right? 3/4 Indian. Think about that. Fair use.
84-year-old Luther Scales, who describes himself as 1/4 black and 3/4 Indian, is president of the Coweta, Oklahoma Historical Society. He remembers stories his Creek Indian grandfather told him about the removal, which was devastating for the Creeks as well.
He said
Okay, so he's Creek, right? 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian, and he's going to go into detail about what his grandfather told him about the migration when they were forced into Oklahoma.
Told him about the removal, which was devastating for the Creeks as well.
He said the roughest part of it was crossing the Mississippi River in a boat.
How so?
Well, man, the Mississippi.
Now, y'all hear him talking? He's 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian. But when you hear him speak, right? If you didn't see a picture of him and you heard him talking, right?
Remember stories his Creek Indian grandfather told him about the removal, which was devastating for the Creeks as well.
He said the roughest part of it was crossing the Mississippi River in a boat.
How so?
Well, man, the Mississippi River, do you know down there in Arkansas and Mississippi, when you're talking about a mile or so across the river.
How many of y'all granddaddies, great granddaddies sound like that? That sound like that 1/4, that 1/4 is real strong. Right, you can see the features. Even the 1/4 is taking over the features. Right, the most you give him is probably the nose part and the skin. You know, his hair is cut short. You know, so if his hair was longer, he probably could, you know, get away with that. But you definitely see a mixture. Is the point that I'm trying to make. Now think about this. This was done. This documentary that we looking at now was done back in the 80s. How many generations are we from that? We're probably about 3 generations, 4 generations from that. Right. Now you think about his children. Where did his children more than likely marry back into? Right. And I'm sure his children, you know, at this point are grown adults and they probably had children, you know, and their children probably had children and their children probably have children now. That's how far from this that we are now. How many generations we from that now? So how much of this is probably bred out generation after generation, the more and more, the more it's bred out, whichever direction you go back in. We know damn well they didn't go back into the Indian side. But a lot of our people during this particular time, especially, held fast to that because that's what they knew, that's what they understood. That was probably the only thing that they knew in terms of assimilation, full assimilation in culture prior to Jim Crow and different things like that. Because there were certain things done by law that had to be done. So we're gonna get into that part. But y'all just peep all of this, peep all the details, right? He's 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian. But if you had a blindfold on, right, he sounds just like one of our great granddaddies. You know what I'm saying? As far back as we can remember. If you're an 80s baby like me, you can remember great granddaddy. Now, times kind of different. Great granddaddy in the club now, trying to get his Mac on. It was probably the same way back then too. But in any case, y'all see the connection, y'all see the mixture, right? Fair use.
And then in a boat, as swift as that water running, well, you got problems.
Once in Oklahoma, the slaves were put to work, raising cotton, building the new nations. The Merle home, which still stands outside Tahlequah, Oklahoma, was built by the Cherokees' black slaves. And should you think the Indians were much kinder masters than the whites, listen to Granny Phyllis's words in the interview about my great-grandfather.
My husband was George Pettit. He told me his mammy was sold away from him when he was a little boy. He looked down a long lane after her just as long as he could see her and cried after her. He went down to the big road and sat down by his mammy's barefoot tracks in the sand and sat there until it got dark. And then he'd come on back to the quarters.
So slavery to the Native Americans was no more or less harsh than it was to the whites. There is a lot of history on this. I don't have a lot of it, but there are things that go into detail about the different things they did. As a matter of fact, there are many accounts that talk about how the Indians rather, how they hunted runaway slaves and tortured them. So when you start looking at the different means of torture, they practice a lot of these things. They sold our people. They put them to work. Like you said, once they arrived in Oklahoma, they was put to work. They had to, start putting seeds in the ground, start building shelter and everything for those people. So if the northern tribes were already here, they were the ones calling themselves Indians, right? And if those are the northern tribes, then they were the ones enslaving us, right? So they all strayed away from the Most High and were serving all kinds of other gods. That's true. It said the natives own Negro slaves, right? Is that, yep, that's what they showing you. Y'all go to get me in trouble saying I said nothing. Said, do they have fully developed and beautiful communities on reservations? From what I hear, it's kind of in some areas is not so good. It's kind of slummed out. That's what I hear. Fair use.
Oklahomans reenacting the Civil War Battle of Honey Springs. When it actually occurred, this was the Creek Nation in Indian Territory, slave territory, in which all of the 5 civilized tribes had signed treaties supporting the South. And the battle actually looked much like something out of the movie Glory, except it wasn't the 54th Massachusetts, but the 1st Kansas Colored Regiment that saved the day. Because of fear of attacks from nearby Kansas, many Indian slave owners fled south.
I can just remember when Master John Harnish took us to Texas. We went in a covered wagon with oxen and camped out all along the way.
My sister, Elaine Ford Staton, reading the words of our great-grandmother, Phyllis Pettit, a girl at the time of the war. In ex-slave interviews conducted by federal workers during the Depression, she told how her brother, Johnson Thompson, and her parents were sold from one Cherokee master to another and taken to Texas.
And Pappy done the driving of the oxen. I was set in a wagon and listened to him pop his whip and holler.
On the square of the old Cherokee capital in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, stands a monument to Cherokee Confederate war dead. But the war here was confusing. While Cherokee Chief John Ross was arrested by the Union Army and shipped to D.C., his mansion was burned to the ground by Cherokee Confederate General Stan Wadey, who just didn't like the chief. And while Creek Chief Samuel Chakotay fought for the South, Apathalaya, another Creek chief, fought for the Unions.
There's this gentleman who's on the internet who's advocating for Black people being indigenous, and he claims to be 100% Creek by blood. Now, he don't look nothing like this dude. Now, maybe somewhere down the line, he may have Creek in his blood. I'm not taking that, but he says he's 100% Creek by blood. I want y'all to look at this.
Stan Wadey, who just didn't like the chief. And while Creek Chief Samuel Chakotay fought for the South, Apathalaya, another Creek chief, fought for the Unions, his slaves at his side. In any event, when the war was over, the tribes who'd all signed Confederate treaties were in trouble.
The United States government informed the 5 civilized tribes that all previous treaties are null and void. And the first thing to be accomplished is to sign a peace treaty.
The new treaties meant the Indians lost more land. And since this wasn't legally considered the United States, Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had not covered Indian slaves. So the treaty said they had to be freed.
One of the things the federal government required in those treaties was that these tribes adopt the...
All right, I want us to take it slow right here. Pay attention to what's being said, all right? Remember, when the 5 tribes were forced west, they took their slaves with them, right? They pretty much still classified them as their slaves, treated them as their slaves and everything, right? But now something else is taking place, right?
And since this wasn't legally considered the United States, Abraham lost...
The United States government informed the 5 civilized tribes that all previous treaties are null and void. And the first thing to be accomplished is to sign a peace treaty.
The new treaties meant the Indians lost more land. And since this wasn't legally considered the United States, Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had not covered Indian slaves. So the treaty said they had to be freed.
One of the things the federal government required in those treaties was that these tribes adopt the blacks as equal members of the tribe, their former slaves.
One day.
All right, so the United States pretty much, you know how they say the white man broke the treaty, right? That's the treaty. Now they had to sign a new peace treaty, which forced them to reclassify their slaves and adopt their slaves into their respective tribes. They had to basically adopt them, classify them as one of them. So if you were a slave to the Indians, by law, they had to reclassify you as a Creek or whatever tribe you were subject to. This is how our people became Creeks, Choctaws, and whatever respective tribe they were parts of, because of a new treaty. All right, I'm gonna rewind this.
In any event, when the war was over, the tribes who'd all signed Confederate treaties were in trouble.
The United States government informed the 5 civilized tribes that all previous treaties are null and void. And the first thing to be accomplished is to sign a peace treaty.
The new treaties meant the Indians lost more land. And since this wasn't legally considered the United States, Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation had not covered Indian slaves. So the treaty said they had to be freed.
One of the things the federal government required in those treaties was that these tribes adopt the blacks as equal members of the tribe, their former slaves.
One day, old Master stayed after he ate breakfast. And when us Negroes come in to eat, he said, "After today, I ain't your master anymore. You all as free as I am. We just stand and look and don't know what to say about it."
The words of her brother, Johnson Thompson, read by his great-grandson, Maurice Shepard.
Pappy wanted to go back to his mother when the war was over and the slaves were freed. He made a deal with Dave Mounts, a white man who was moving into the Indian country, to drive for him.
Granny Phyllis described a harrowing trip in which they had to fight off wolves with fire from their camp.
Saying that's when the indigenous doctrine began after that new treaty. This is what I was trying to connect, right? If the acknowledgement is there that our people were slaves to them, that means we're not the same as them. They were enslaving our people, right? How did our people then become one with them, equal to them, assimilated with them? It was by law. That was their way of sort of diminishing the so-called Native Americans. Think about how wealthy and powerful you are becoming when you got slavery, when you got laborers, employees, right? Just think about that. They can't sit back and watch nobody else get fat like that, man, off of the same thing, the same way. Nah. See, now when they had us as slaves, did they assimilate us with them? Did we wake up one day and all of a sudden, oh, we just as equal as them? Or did we wake up one day and, you know, hey, y'all niggas is free now with nothing? You know, fair use.
A wagon journey over land and water that lasted 5 weeks.
When we would come to a river, we would cross ferry boats. But me and brother rode on a bed in the back of the wagon, and when we were crossing a river, Father would make us lie down and wouldn't let us look out. He was afraid we would fall out in the river.
Finally, they arrived back to Fort Gibson in northeastern Oklahoma, where their father's mother was working as a cook for the U.S. soldiers.
My grandma, Phyllis Harnage, was the mother of the Colored Baptist Church on 4 Mile Branch, east of Fort Gibson. She organized the church and was head of it as long as she lived.
Since the Cherokee tribe owned all the land, as new Cherokee citizens, the family merely picked a spot. After Granny Phyllis Pettit married, her first child was my grandmother, Lutetia, who's...
All right, so let's slow it down again. Listen to what he said.
She organized the church and was head of it as long as she lived.
Since the Cherokee tribe owned all the land, as new Cherokee citizens, the family merely picked a spot.
So the land that they were owned by Cherokees. Since now they are equal members of the Cherokee tribe, they can now choose this plot of land and own it. How many of y'all hear people say, my family had land? My people been here. My family had land. How did they get that land? See, notice the key in that. My family had land. That would indicate that your family at some point acquired that land. When did that happen? This is what happened when our people became equal citizens among these Indian tribes. So they own land don't sound like a Deuteronomy 28 curse. Well, it's always a curse when you have something and they take it away from you. That's a curse. You can acquire anything, and at the end of the day, they can take it away from you. See, it's a curse to have something and still have to, fight tooth and nail to pay for it and maintain it. Right? Some of our people have land to this day, but they have to go through hell to keep it and fight for it. You don't have to do that when it's really yours. Look out, D. What's going on?
What's poppin', bro? Shalom.
Mm-hmm.
I see you on this thing alone. I say, let me hop in here, bro, real quick.
Yeah, man. I'm just, the indigenous thing. It's spreading, and I'm gonna say this, man. It's gonna continue to spread. Y'all gonna see more of our people getting into this. There are a lot of people in Israel teaching and believing this. What you think, bro, when it comes to the indigenous thing,
To the indigenous thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, bro, I think mine's tripping, bro. I'm gonna go out and come right back in. I heard you ask a question though.
All right. So while he doing that, we're gonna look at this, but the land part, right? Y'all hear a lot of people talk about land. My people had land here, and it's like, okay, there were even after slavery, chattel slavery to the whites. There were some of our people who were able to acquire land. What's going on, bro?
Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. You good? We can hear you.
Yeah, I hear you though, bro. Why y'all want to be native to these? Why y'all want to be native so bad? He said he's gonna be scattered to the four corners. How you native if you scattered?
Well, I don't know how they would answer that, but my understanding is that we are scattered, but once again, that rivals that particular understanding. But the land part, right? I'm gonna let this play one more time just to.
She organized the church and was head of it as long as she lived.
Since the Cherokee tribe owned all the land, as new Cherokee citizens, the family merely picked a spot. After Granny Phyllis Pettit married, her first child was my grandmother, Lutetia, whose third child was my dad, Sammy. Pettits and Fords still own this land today. Our Black History.
Did y'all hear that? This was in the 80s, of course, but from back then up until that point, he said they still owned that land.
First child was my grandmother, Lutetia, whose third child was my dad, Sammy. Pettits and Fords still own this land today.
So you hear a lot of our people talk about land. My people got land, right? My people got land. My people been here. Now we see the actual connection as to how they acquired that land, and even to this present day, the 1980s would be present, you know, relative to back then to the 80s, you know. So you got land, right? And it's Indian land, Choctaw land. Well, this is land that the 5 civilized tribes owned. Their land was chopped down and diminished over time, right? Once their land was chopped down and divided, they signed a new treaty, which caused them to have to assimilate their slaves into their tribes. So if you my slave, so if I'm a Choctaw and you my slave, right? One day, the next day we wake up, now you are a Choctaw. You're no longer my slave. You are an equal citizen of the Choctaw tribe. That's how that worked. But we obviously see the African Native American connection. We saw the elder brother who was 1/4 black, 3/4 Indian, right? So it's no denying it. And you know, growing up, like I say, I'm 80s baby in the South. We saw a lot of this kind of stuff. It wasn't new to us or foreign to us that some of our people rather were mixed with some of the Native Americans, because not all the Negroes escaped from the plantations. Some of them had to endure it, some of them stayed, and this is why you got some of them saying it wasn't so bad or acting like it. That's the mentality. So we have all of this to consider. Once they acquired the land, he said they still owned that land to this day, right? And this was in the 80s. You got any thoughts, bro? I'm gonna play another video real quick under fair use. This video gonna kind of go more into some details about the slavery. This video is from a channel called Forgotten History. And once again, this is under fair use. I don't own this content. Let me get it going here. What you got, D? This video is titled Native American Slave Owners Forgotten History. This is under fair use.
And society practiced it. And we're also slavery is as old as civilization. Every culture and society practiced it. And we're also victims of it. The North American Indians were no different. Various tribes enslaved other tribes, usually through raids and after battles, capturing their quarry. This included men, women, and children. Native Americans also captured whites and also had black slaves from the colonial period until the end of the Civil War.
So you hear white people, or you hear people now, right? It's rather strange, right? Peculiar now how you have a lot of people saying white people were slaves, but it's always opposed to what we say about our slavery. That's really supposed to nullify or silence us from talking about our slavery. Well, white people were enslaved, right? What did he just say here? Right?
This included men, women, and children. Native Americans also captured whites and also had black slaves from the colonial period until the end of the Civil War.
From the colonial period to the end of the Civil War, Native Americans had whites and blacks as slaves, right? So you have white people saying, or people vouching for white people saying, you know, white people were slaves too. Well, maybe some of them were slaves right alongside the blacks to the Native Americans. Who knows? But that's insignificant, because a lot of that, like you said, was due to war and different things like that. And a lot of them were released. You know, the fact that Native Americans had blacks in slavery empowered them to be able to do those kind of things, which is why they did what they did. But let's get some more. Fair use.
How common was Native American enslavement? Were there any major differences between Indian slave owners and other ethnic slave owners? Which tribes were the most notorious for enslaving others? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, a veteran of the United States Army and Marine Corps, former history professor, book author, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History.
Wow.
Now, a lot of these videos, you know, you gotta sort of question the true motive and backdrop behind it. But I'm just in it for the information's sake, right? A person who looking at this through a strong lens is probably questioning why you got this white man talking about white people being enslaved by Indians, white people and black people being enslaved by Indians, right? But this is an actual aspect of American history. All right, fair use.
Many tribes practiced slavery. However, their primary practice was not based upon race, but more on their differences in tribal customs and the conflict between tribes over territory and resources. Many times, slaves were taken to replace those who had been killed, especially as laborers. Children who were orphaned were usually brought up within the tribe as their own, without distinction. This was also true of white captives, such as the famous story of Comanche chief Quanah Parker's mother. She was captured as a young girl and brought up as Comanche, and when forcibly returned to white society, she could not assimilate. But many Indian cultures captured or accepted runaway black slaves, and not all tribes treated them the same way. In the Iroquois nation of New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, which was actually comprised of the 5 original Iroquois nations, which comprised the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. It was not uncommon, and chronicled by the French, that the Iroquois tribes were rather ruthless in the rage to capture slaves, black or white. And the captives often underwent very long, painful, and humiliating torture sessions to break their spirits. But in the colonies, in the mid-1760s, New York requested, as a requirement of treaties with the Huron and Delaware tribes.
Now, he talked about how ruthless the Iroquois were to capture slaves and what they had to endure, right? The torture they went through to break the spirits. Now, think about what happened during chattel slavery, right? Think about those of our people who remained on the plantation and endured that. And look at how many of our people have a certain mindset today that they can't let this nation go. It was the same way with the Indians. This is why you have certain of our people so tied to that culture, tied to that heritage, right? It's engraved in them, right? Engraving something is a painful process. It's a strenuous process, but that's what happened. That culture was forced on our people. They were vulnerable. They were escaping one rulership, going into another one, seeking refuge from one torture and going into another one, only to later on, be set free. And now you're fully a part of this very tribe that you were once a slave to. You can reap the benefits. You can own land. You can do all these different things. What's going on, Brother Amir? Right? Just imagine that. Why a lot of our people are claiming to be indigenous. Maybe they're the descendants and the residue of the ones who endured that on the other end of things. Just like we talk about Christianity. Why are people so hell-bent on Christianity and the Gentiles? Well, that was engraved into our people. Think about Spain and Portugal. In order, to be preserved, what did our people do? They converted. They took their children away. They took our people's children away, put them on boats. A lot of our people converted because they thought that would probably unite them. What's going on, Brother Robert? Shalom. They thought that was going to unite them with their children, but it didn't. So think about that, forcing Christianity on our people, baptizing us into Christianity. It's the same thing with Indian culture. Same thing with Islam. You name it, right? These are other gods that the Most High said our people would serve. And so when he said serve those gods, whatever is required of service, that's what was done. And most of these other gods require blood. Our blood. So why do you think our people can't let this shit go? Can't let Christianity go? Now we native, we indigenous. Can't let it go. Why do you think the Bible says that our hearts got to be circumcised? It's a heart issue. We have to be, it's like almost safe to say a miracle, man. Like, I believe in this miracle. I believe it's going to happen. It's like he said, we're going to be changed in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye. That's the same way he can circumcise the hearts of our people. But that's what's got to happen. Because I'm going to be real. This doesn't resonate with me. Telling me we indigenous, we Indians, and we was always here, that don't resonate with me. I don't want this land. It's too bloody. It's too defiled. T. Brown, shalom. I don't want this land. On my way to and from work, y'all, I be seeing dead deers and pigs and hogs and shit all up and down the road. In the country part. So don't nobody come pick that stuff up. It just be out there. And luckily, I'm glad I drive by it. Praise y'all, I'm driving by it. I hate to be walking by something like that. Probably pass out. Seen a hog sitting out there so long, it's flat now. Ain't nothing but hair right there like a rug. You know them black hogs, they hairy. That hog was out there so long, man, all the flesh and everything just gone out of it. It's like a rug right there on the ground. It's probably a 200-300 pound hog. It was big. Imagine how much blood is on this soil, how much of our blood that got to be avenged. Fair use.
Underwent very long, painful, and humiliating torture sessions to break their spirits. But in the colonies, in the mid-1760s, New York requested, as a requirement of treaties with the Huron and Delaware tribes, that they had to return escaped slaves, yet the record does not reflect that any were in fact returned. In fact, those that we call the 5 civilized tribes in the southeast United States, which were actually given that name due to their adoption of many European cultural values, to include centralized forms of representative government, conversion to Christianity, education and literacy, intermarriage with whites, and of course, their participation in the ownership of black slaves. Much of this cultural assimilation was due to the belief by the tribes that if they acquiesced and adopted European methods, then they would not be persecuted themselves and pushed off their lands. These Native American groups primarily included the nations in the Southeast, such as the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw Creek, and Seminole tribes. Ironically, only the Chickasaw and Choctaw failed to free all of the people they held in captivity until 1866, after the Civil War, when the federal government had to step in. By the 18th century, many Native Americans owned black slaves, and some tribes, such as the Catawba and Cherokee, were notorious for their dislike of blacks. Hence, their slaves were not normally assimilated, but worked like common laborers under often harsh conditions.
Right, going into detail about, how they had our people in slavery. Some of the tribes were forced to release their slaves, but then also that was during the same time they were forced to, basically give our people equal rights into the tribe. So that was going on as well. But I want y'all to look at these pictures, right? Look at some of these old depictions. Like look at this for instance, right? This is more of like a look like it's probably from the 1700s or so, but then they have depictions of black people dressed as Indians with feathers, the different, attire, the different cultural looks and everything. And these pictures are supposed to be from the 1600s, 1700s, so forth and so on. And these are a lot of the pictures that people use to show that our people are indigenous. But it was during these times that our people were enslaved to these people. Y'all see this right here? Remember, the slaves don't ride horses. Right? This is a dark skin, I don't know if this is a man or a woman, right? Look like a man got on pants. Right? But he's doing the service and he's riding the horse. Right? Now, these are our people being enslaved to these people. Now, quite naturally, just like we're enslaved here, you're not going to be able to keep your own customs, your own dress and everything. If you're the one that's captive, you're the one that's subject, you got to make the changes. So a lot of these depictions of our people are dated to these time periods when this was going on. This is why I ask people when they have documents or whatever, what time period is that dated to? What year is that dated to? Because that determines, what you're really saying or what you're trying to say. Right? 1600s up until the Civil War ended, right? You had this going on. Now, people say that there were black tribes here in America prior to all of that. I'm not against that, you know. And I'm gonna be honest, that's more the information I want to explore if that's relative to us. Who were these people that were here? Shalom, good life. Who were these people that were here? But we see a lot of our people claim to be indigenous. A lot of our people claim to, you know, have land. Even to this day, you got people that say, my people still got land, right? Go deeper into the understanding of how they acquired that land. And I agree, some of them still might. Some of our people still may have that mixture to an extent, right? So all considering is what I'm trying to say. How are we coming to these conclusions, and how is this information how can I put this? Sort of strange how this information goes against what we believe in scripture, right? That's why I invited a brother on tonight. I don't know if he's watching. I don't know if he's going to come on or not. But I'm torn between the 2 points of view. You have some people who believe we are indigenous that will say that black people are not African. We are from America. We are indigenous. And then you have some people who will say not all black people are products of the transatlantic slave trade. I say if you are of Negroid descent, you are a product of the transatlantic slave trade. However, you may have connections to Native Americans through your ancestry. That's something you may have to look into. Now, once you look into that and you see your name on the roll, or you see you have a relative that was registered as a Creek or a Choctaw or whatever, then you can explore that. I have a great grandfather that was, you know, a Creek. If you want to say full-blooded Creek, then that's where I'm gonna challenge you, because now you're using an angle that you're going against at the same time. They don't like to use DNA. They go by genealogy and documents and tracing those documents and connections and things like that. And that's what I'm saying. You have so much division. You have people who are of African descent. Some of your relatives may have connections to the natives, and some of them may not, depending on the line they come through. My family is like that. You know, there's a side of my family that has a connection with that lane, that strong lane of being here, native, you know, that kind of thing. They fall into this history we talking about. Then there's a side of my family that don't identify with that. You know, I had one of my uncles who's passed now, who told me that most of our people come out of Egypt. Right? That's what he told me. They came here, and he said some of them were slave drivers, because a lot of, you know, they did use a lot of our own people, you know, as taskmasters. But that's what he said. Now, were our people in Egypt? Of course. Right? And they ended up in Louisiana, some of my people up in New York. Right? Some of them are spread out, you know what I mean? But I know mostly some of them was in New York, you know, Louisiana. Has some in Alabama, right? They might ask you where the slave ships at. Well, if you look at the history of all the slave ships that were found here, those were a lot of places that ships were brought to. Those are coastal states. Say Dane Calloway pushing, yeah. Dane Calloway is a strong advocate of that, strong advocate. But he's selective in who he will debate. Me, I'm not I don't discriminate when it comes to my people and find out what the truth is. That's just me. They say America is the real Egypt. They change the maps all around. Has anyone else? Yeah, I've heard that too. America is the real Egypt, which would mean Israel, the true. If America is biblical Egypt, that would mean that the biblical Israel would have to be in close proximity, right? Now, the Most High told Abram that, he told Israel that I'm going to bring you into Egypt again with ships. Said maybe he'll plant. That's not a maybe. And you notice another thing too. A lot of these people, when questioned on their belief about the Bible, I never really seen or heard of these people being questioned about their belief. To me, this is kind of one of those things that, how can I explain it? It's like how school is, right? Public school. 5 days a week, you go to school where everything that you learning in school is an indirect way of telling you that God is not real. They're not putting it in those terms, but they're telling you that by everything they teach you, science, literature, history, mathematics, you know what I mean? Everything. They're programming you to pretty much proclaim or come to the conclusion yourself that God is not real, but they're not saying it. That's how this belief is when it comes to the indigenous belief. You don't really hear a lot of people saying they don't believe the Bible, but everything they teach rivals what the scriptures is saying. And it's subtle. And I think, at some point, some true understanding got to be brought to it. Like I say, I'm not denying the connection. Say Mike TV pushes the indigenous. Yeah, I've looked at some of his videos too. But the thing about Mike TV, man, I would only talk to Mike TV on a neutral platform. I don't like how he runs his platform. I respect every man's right to do things the way they want to do it, but that's why I don't go over there. He made it clear plenty of times that if you don't like how I run it, you don't have to call in or you don't have to come on. Okay. So I respect that, but I will have a conversation with him, no doubt. Most definitely on a neutral platform. He come off his front porch into the street, because I'm already in the street. Most definitely. Fair use.
Turkey were notorious for their dislike of blacks. Hence, their slaves were not normally assimilated, but worked like common laborers under often harsh conditions. The Cherokee were also famous for owning the largest number of black slaves purchased from white slave traders in the colonial period. It is recorded.
Let me show you why.
Hey, y'all, think about something. One of the things that the scripture says, right? It says you shall have sons and daughters, right? But you should not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity, right? You should be sold, all these different things, right? He mentioned just now the white slave traders selling slaves. Who were they selling these slaves to? That's why this is talking about forgotten history. We always hear about our people being sold, but once our people were sold off of the auction blocks, and not, I'm sure some of our people were sold to the Indians from the auction blocks. Maybe some of them were there, I'm sure, because they have their own issues with the white man. But when the white slave traders were selling the slaves, right, from the plantations, right? Let's say if you took a baby or something, you sold it, right? You took a child from his mother and father and you sold it. Who were they selling these babies to? Were they selling them to other plantations? Right? A lot of these people were being sold to these Native American, these Indians.
Assimilated, but worked like common laborers under often harsh conditions. The Cherokee were also famous for owning the largest number of black slaves purchased from white slave traders in the colonial period.
Did y'all hear that?
Under often harsh conditions. The Cherokee were also famous for owning the largest number of black slaves purchased from white slave traders in the colonial period.
The Cherokee. Isn't this one of the main tribes that our people claim to be? Y'all hear a lot of people claim to be Cherokee. The Cherokees owned the largest amount of slaves during the colonial period, of black slaves during the colonial period, bought from white slave owners. Where were they buying these slaves from? From the white slave owners, from their plantations. Selling them away from their families, from their mothers, their fathers. That's the blood that's pumping in our veins today. This. Y'all see this picture right here? This is what I come from. You can be as indigenous as you want to be. This is what I come from right here. That's what's in my blood. So we have to be honest with the history. And at some point, we're going to have to put this to bed, because the Most High said we will remember ourselves in the land of our captivity. But we got all these disruptions. What is being Native American indigenous going to do for us? What do we have coming as a result of accepting that? If I was to say, you know what, I put everything down, I accept I'm indigenous, what does that promise me? What comfort do I have in that? What comfort do I have in a land that I know the Most High is coming to destroy? America is the smallest land. According to all the continents, it's the smallest. America has nothing to offer the world. Nothing of value. Name something that America offers the world that's of value. The Most High said the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet filled. And that's what America is. America is spreading out to the nations. Iniquity, sin, everything that's contrary. Babylon the Great. But we're supposed to despise the very place that all the nations are fighting for right now, because we want to say they don't like us. Who don't like us? I don't give a damn who don't like us. The Bible tells us don't nobody like us. We don't like us. What does that have to do with what the Most High's words say? Why you think the Most High saying the tents of Judah gonna be saved first? Because don't nobody like us, and everybody want what belongs to us. So you got to bring us out first, establish us, so that the kingdom can be established. Say America is the purveyors of depravity. Indeed. America drinks iniquity like water. America, you know how something can't survive unless, you know, like a vampire, right? A vampire need blood. What you got to do to get blood? That's what America is. To America, blood is water. And that's what prophecies say they're gonna get to drink. You can't sustain yourself from that unless you're a devil, a bloodsucker. And there's judgment coming for all of that.
It is recorded that in 1809, the Cherokee owned nearly 600 black slaves. Another unique fact was that the Cherokee Constitution did not recognize the children of black women as members of the nation. The Cherokee did not recognize formal marriages between their people and the black slaves in the Cherokee Act of Union in 1839, and this was revised in 1855. Those slaves who returned after the Civil War were denied Cherokee citizenship, although Cherokee Chief Lewis Downing tried to legally correct this.
So y'all seeing this? They saying they didn't recognize any marriages, right?
As members of the nation, the Constitution did not recognize the children of black women as members of the nation. The Cherokee did not recognize formal marriages between their people and the black slaves in the Cherokee Act of Union in 1839.
So they didn't recognize any marriages or connections between their people and the Africans, the mixtures in 1839. Showing you that there was a division, a separation.
And this was revised in 1855. Those slaves who returned after the Civil War were denied Cherokee citizenship, although Cherokee Chief Lewis Downing tried to legally correct this.
What does that sound like? When our people went to war for America, right? Vietnam and all these different things, right? What happened to them when they came back? Treated like crap, right? Pretty much nothing, right? So they still do that today, deny us. This is the same thing the Native Americans did, right? The same thing. Remember, what did we see in the beginning? Slavery was an agricultural practice, right? Slavery was an agricultural practice. Long story short, we ain't doing none of the work, y'all doing it, right? Look at them. This is what our people endure for real. These are just depictions. Imagine what it was really like going through this. Naked, no shoes, in the woods. Man, most people couldn't even go outside right now and step on no rocks. Imagine having to walk miles enduring this. History covers up what our people really went through and what they had to endure.
But he was overruled by the National Council, and the Cherokee National Legislature called upon the federal government to remove what they called the intruders.
So they called them intruders. You had a mix person who advocated, to give them citizenship after they came back from the war, but they opposed it. They called them intruders. See, especially in the winter, man. I'm telling you, man. You have a lot of people who are disrespectful in regards to what our people went through. And that's supposed to be a sign to us. We supposed to be praying for them. We supposed to be saying we remember what they did and remembering the resurrection on their behalf. But you got people who will say this never happened. Right? Not saying all of them say this don't happen. They all agree with the slavery part for the most part. But it's the taking away what they took us away from. Everything our people went through to try to be accepted. So they did us so dirty. That's an understatement.
But he was overruled by the National Council, and the Cherokee National Legislature called upon the federal government to remove what they called the intruders. However, it should be noted that there was a sect within the Cherokee called the T.I.R Society, which was a secret abolitionist organization that ran its own underground railroad and protected runaway slaves. The Chickasaw produced cotton, corn, tobacco, livestock, and poultry for self-consumption, but also to sell on the open market to white Americans. Their use of black slave labor assisted in these projects, being that they were an agrarian-based economy. The Chickasaw also gave greater value to white mixed members over those who were black mixed. And in their culture, white mixed Chickasaw often became chiefs, but that was not part of the program for the black Chickasaw.
Yeah, I've heard some they don't agree. I've heard some they don't agree with slavery. They said we were never slaves and brought over on ships. They are black. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different positions. You know what I mean? A lot of different stances. So they got the nerve to call us lazy, wicked, dangerous, all that. Yet they have done all these things unto us, right? Imagine working your ass off all day long, right? And when it's time to pay you, they call you lazy, right? After the work is done. After the work is done and they're eating and benefiting from the labor, now they want to call you lazy and they haven't gave you nothing, right? Now, it just talked about the difference between the Chickasaws that was mixed with white and the ones that was mixed with black, and the difference in how they was treated. Pretty much the same. The ones that were mixed with white, they were allowed to be chiefs rather, and they were held in high regard as opposed to the ones that was mixed with black. Look at how many mix people between black and white now, and listen to the testimonies they have, right? Not so good for the most part, right? A lot of them have horrible testimonies about how they not accepted by the white side or how they, treated different, even if they mixed parents or whatever, how they have indifferences with the parents. Say black colleges did that. Explain that a little bit more. You talking about like the mixture? Because I'm gonna tell you something that I've seen happen in the HBCU. I've seen where they prop up other races of people, make them the presidents and valedictorians and all these different things, president of student councils and all this kind of stuff. They give them those positions. Black colleges do a lot of that. Yeah. But what we see clearly, right, is therefore the Indians are part of Psalm 83. Why do you all want them to be a part of our covenant? They were beguiled by the white man. Yep. Why should you have mercy? It's like me telling you, hey man, I got one piece of bread right here, right? Now either you can have it or that baby over there can have it. But if you want to have it, you got to go over there and kill that baby, because you got to make sure they don't grow up and get your bread. And so you go over there and do it. That's what they did. That's what they did. They said, okay, I'll do that to that baby for that piece of bread. Only to realize that bread got mold on the other side of it. So all you got left is whatever little good parts you can peel off, because maybe you don't realize that if the bread got mold on the other side, that means it's molded all the way through. And that's what the Indians ended up with, a piece of bread that's molded all the way through, because they thought it was necessary, which it was on the Most High's part because of our disobedience. But disobedience causes confusion, man. Fair use.
In an effort to stop race mixing, Chickasaws were publicly punished for having relationships with blacks. They were subjected to fines, whippings, and often expulsion from the nation. The Creek Nation program for the black Chickasaw. In an effort to stop race mixing, Chickasaws were publicly punished for having relationships with blacks. They were subjected to fines, whippings, and often expulsion from the nation.
Why in it is brought up when our people are saying they're indigenous and that they Chickasaws and I'm full-blooded Creeks and I'm full-blooded Choctaw? Why isn't any of this brought up? If you were a Chickasaw, there was a point in time where they persecuted you for being mixed and mingling with the blacks. Whippings, jail, whatever. That's what it just said, right? I'll just paraphrase it a bit.
But that was not part of the program for the black Chickasaw. In an effort to stop race mixing, Chickasaws were publicly punished for having relationships with blacks. They were subjected to fines, whippings, and often expulsion from the nation.
So you could get kicked out of your own tribe for mixing with a Negro. Same thing we read in Esdras, right? What happened once the priests mingled their holy seed and they got confronted about it? They said, hey, this is what you do. We either keep the law or you forfeit your inheritance. How do we keep the law? You separate from the women and their children. It's a harsh reality, right? Because a lot of our people are in that position, claiming to be mixed, claiming to be this. Well, let me see something real quick. If you know what? Hold on. Look at what the scriptures say. Give me a second. Let me get the scripture. Let me see. Jeremiah 50 in verse 35. I think one of the things most of the times we don't do, when I say we, I'm talking in general. We don't consider how the Most High views things, right? I heard a Christian, right? A well-known Christian named God Logic. Him and this other white guy were debating against these Ish people. Now, you know, the Jewish people, they're not fond of mixing, right? In most cases. But they were debating against these two Jewish people, God Logic and this other Christian dude. And their position was that God's plan is to create a mixed race. They said basically God don't have a problem with mixing. Right? God don't have a problem with a black man or woman getting with a white man or woman, or with any other race of man or woman. He don't have a problem with that. And my thing is, just from a basic standpoint, right? Every demographic, every race of people have their own men, their own women, and the women, for the most part, is going to always outnumber the men. For some reason, China is you know, going through something different, but that's their curse, right? They had laws where you can only have, you know, so many children or whatever, and they did whatever with whatever extra you had. So now their men are outnumbering the women. The white population now is diminishing. All these are judgments on these nations, and it's only going to become more apparent. But in any demographic, the women are going to outnumber the men. So why would the Most High allow that? Right? In terms of, like, when it comes to our people, why would he allow that? See? Why would he allow so much mixture when he divided the people, separated the peoples? And why do you have so much confusion among the nations? This is check this out. Jeremiah 50. And I'm going to start at verse 35. It says, "A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith Yahweh, and upon the inhabitants of Babel, and upon her princes, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars." Right? A sword is upon the liars. Let me ask y'all something. When people say that blacks are not African, we're indigenous to America, and that America is the land, is that a lie? Is that a lie? When people say that America is the land and that we're indigenous? Right? He said, "A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her." and they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. The book of James talks about the rich men, how the rich man laid up treasures for the last days. Now, this is the judgment. The sword is upon their horses, upon their chariots, right? All of the weaponry, it's going to be destroyed, and, no good. What good is a gun with the barrel bent, right? Just take all their guns and just bend all the barrels, right? A sword is upon the mingled people that are in the midst of her. What does that mean? For all of our people who, want to claim this thing and I'm not this and I'm not that. I'm not no African. I'm not no Israelite. Y'all Hebrew Israelites are crazy. And I admit, man, some of them brothers do misrepresent. But that's where you got to have sort of a strong nose for this truth. Because you're going to run into a lot of foul organizations, doctrines, people. But you got to be able to get past that, and hopefully we have enough Holy Spirit to direct us and guide us. But the mingled people, right? If Ezra's chapter 9 is talking about the priests who mingled the holy seed, right, and how that was against the law, then what are mingled people according to the scripture? Run that back, Turbo.
Shalom, brother E.
What's
Shalom,
up,
brothers and sisters in the chat. Shalom.
Are you indigenous, man? Are you an Indian? I know they've been saying you Mexican. I'm gonna start calling you indigenous.
Never that.
Run that back, Turbo, the Indian. Indian Turbo. What's good, bro?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. Just getting off the plantation.
Yeah.
I saw this topic, bro, because I meant to join. I meant to hop on like very early, but I couldn't because of my connection. But now that I'm home, I'm here and looking at the title. I'm happy to see the title, bro. The Indigenous Lie, bro.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I laid some things out, man. I don't know if you was able to see everything, but one thing I did want to establish is the fact that there is a connection between our people and the Native Americans, and the history bears that out. So I wanted to be true to the history because I remember the issue you had not too long ago. I don't want to get too deep into that on the platform, where sister lashed out at you about, her being indigenous and her people being here. And I wanted to point that out because that's something that you hear from a lot of our people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What you think, man, about what's your thoughts on that, about our people making this claim and what you see happening in the future?
Well, what I see about when they make claims like this, it tells me where their heart and mindset is at and their faith in the Most High. You know, they don't believe the word, just point blank. They don't believe what the scripture says at all. But what I could see happening in the future, see, you gotta understand these are also rebels too. That the Most High said He will, purge out in the kingdom. You know, that how did that scripture go? Basically saying that nothing defiled can enter into the kingdom. That means if you a rebel, FBA, indigenous, if you still holding on to that even when we get into the wilderness, guess what? You won't see the kingdom. So, but yeah, that's what I see happening in the future.
So what's the use in claiming you're indigenous and you got to get up and go, right?
Right.
And ain't nothing you're gonna be able to do about it. And not only that, you're gonna want to go. When you see what's happening, you're gonna want to get up and go. You ain't gonna be worrying about being indigenous to this land once you see what go down.
Nope.
Indigenous, man, whatever.
And then I was on a brother's live earlier, and he made an interesting point. Shout out to Yexer. I don't know if y'all know who that brother is, but that's a real good brother too, and he brings out like the same thing we bring out.
Okay.
He made a point earlier that how did it go? It was literally in my head, and then I just completely forgot about it. But it'll come back to me.
Indeed.
It'll come back to me.
Look, when it start going down, right? When the Most High start to really, start to get with these nations, is you're gonna go from being indigenous to now the earth is my home.
Yup. Yup. Yup.
The earth is my home.
They definitely will run today. They'll definitely run today.
But we indigenous all over the earth. No shit.
Sound like something Kadar would say. Proudly.
The earth is my home. Man, look, the earth was made for Israel's sake, right?
Yep. Isaiah 45:17, and John 3:16 that Christians love so much. Even though the world is literally, it means Israel, the world of Israel. That's who the world was meant for. Israel. So
to this day, Ephraim is still against us and will be until the Most High brings two sticks together. Man, look, as far as I'm concerned, Negroes is against each other. You know what I'm saying? So we don't know who's who. We don't know what tribe. We can just go by the general migration. I don't know what tribe I'm in, but you're right. To this day, is like that. But let's look at some more of this because we showed the connection, right? We talked about how a lot of our people claim to have been here and they family had land and different things. We showed how all of that happened. We showed how the Native Americans had our people in slavery, and they were forced to free them and release them and give them equal citizenship and adopt them into the tribes and everything. Yeah, we laid that out. Hold on, give me a second. Okay. Run that back. You got some couple of thoughts you want to share right quick? Let me do something real quick.
No, not at the moment, but I'll think of something, and share it with the chat.
Hold on.
All right.
Let me see. I'm gonna mute out. Hey, babe, come here right quick. Come here real quick. Let me mute out real quick. Yeah, I was just checking on something real quick. I just want to take a pause and lift up a sister that's fellowshipping with us. She been fellowshipping with us for a while. She's family. Sister Linya. I just want to lift her up in prayer. Her and her family. Going through medical conditions. I won't be specific, but I will say that I want to lift her up in prayer. I want to acknowledge the Most High, and this is an opportunity for us to cry out. And so, on behalf of our sister and what she's going through, and what her family's enduring right now, we beseech the Most High, and we ask that you search our hearts, search our minds. Only the Most High can search your heart and search your mind in sincerity. And we ask that you hear our prayers on behalf of our sister and her family. And we ask that you give comfort. We ask that your will be done. We know that it's in your will to bring wholeness and to bring healing. We ask that you forgive us for our sins. We acknowledge our sins, and we ask that you forgive us our sins and our trespasses. And we ask that you bring to mind those things that we're doing that's contrary to you. Due to our captivity, a lot of our truth has been hidden from us and erased, so we don't even know what wrong is. And a lot of us suffer because of that. Scriptures say we suffer for lack of knowledge. So we ask that you bring light. We ask that you bring clarity. We ask that you bring healing in our spirits, our minds, and in our bodies. And we ask that you grant us repentance so that we can be cleansed and healed and brought back to you, and so that we can see your truth and have our hearts circumcised to walk in your truth. We know that the Most High can do above and beyond what we ask, so our words are but few. We ask that the Most High search our hearts, search our needs, and grant our requests in the name of his one and only begotten Son, Yehoshua Mashiach, who died for the sins of Israel, his people, to redeem his people and bring us back. Hallelujah. Praise the Most High. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Now, Daniel and the three Hebrew boys, they said that we don't know if the Most High will do this, but we know that he's able. And on that alone, we put our hats, whether he do it or not, whatever he does, our praises to him. We know that he's able. And so that's what we believe. And we pray for our sister, man. Sister Linya, She's been more than just a sister to us, man. She been like an auntie, a big sister. You know what I'm saying? And so we love you, sis. We praying for you, and just keep us posted. You know what I mean? May the Most High hear our prayers. You know, and like I said, this a chance for us to cry out. You know, I know the Most High will respond if we cry out. I done it before, plenty of times. And so, you got any thoughts on that?
I'll just say, sister, you know, what Brother Ebri said, sister, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for all strength over you and your family. You know, I just hate hearing stuff like that. But as a young brother, you know, my faith, I've always believed that the Most High can do beyond, you know, what we ask for. And I pray that he does the same for you and your family, sister. I'm praying to the bottom of my heart for you and your family, sister.
Indeed. So, you know, and even with all of this, man, this is an opportunity for us to cry out and for the Most High to show up on our behalf, because we got a lot of our people believing things that's not true. And so, whose God is real? You know, is the indigenous God real, or is our God real? You know.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
There's none like our Elua. There is none like him. And our God will always be true. No matter what people say, he will always be true. His word will always stand.
Yep. And so we standing with you, sis. You already know. I want to end this soon, man, because I think we kind of laid it out. And I really like I said earlier, I got into sort of a back and forth with a brother. And I'm real short with people online, you know, because I like to call people out. I don't like to go chat and type 1,000 words and all that kind of stuff. You know, let's go come to the platform and let's talk it out. So I invited him. I didn't know if he was gonna show up or not. He told me to let him know a time, so I told him I'll set up a live this day, this time. He never responded. You know, it's been a little while, so I was hoping he would have showed up. Maybe he's watching, you know, maybe not. I don't know, but you know how that go. My thing is, let's iron this out so we can start, you know, getting to the real truth of who we are. You know, the obvious connection is there, but the foundational understanding is not there. We got our wires crossed. Is this the land? Is this the promised land? And if so, where does Genesis 15 come into play? The 400-year prophecy. And where? Right? This is why I say either Most High's word is true, or what everybody's saying is true. You know what I realized, Turbo, with most of our people?
Yeah, what's that?
a lot of our people don't even want to be from Africa. They don't want to be from Africa.
You want to know why?
Why is that?
Because look at the condition Africa is in now. When Africa starts to rise, that's when the whole shift will happen. See, I was talking to Brother T, one day about this, and he brought this to my attention that we don't like to be on the losing team. We always like being on the winning team. We just like to win. And currently, like right now, America is still winning compared to Africa. But when you look at how things are going, Africa is rising. You start to, I've been seeing this lately, that a lot more of our people are not only talking about moving, to Africa, but they're actually moving back to Africa. And so right now, our brothers and sisters that don't want to be part of Africa, it's because of Africa is still losing. But when Africa rises to the top, then we will start to see, more and more of our people that supports delineation will go back to claiming, or claiming their African identity. I can see that happening, and that's literally what's happening, as we speak.
Just like you remember Ibrahim Traore, right? And the last thing, and how that sparked everybody,
Yep.
to embrace Africa. Then this last thing with I Show Speed, how that made everybody see Africa different, because Africa is really on the rise. It's just being held back. Africa is very well modernized and been so for a while. We just haven't been exposed to that part of Africa. So we think, it's third world, but hell, it's third world spots in America.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then what I found out too from my dad, you've ever wondered like how every country has roads and all that, but they show when they show Africa, it's like dirt roads. Well, it's like my dad one time told me that Africa had always had roads. He was like, "Why do you think China has roads, and along with all these other countries, that have well developed roads?" It's because when they went to Africa and they seen how the Africans were making roads there and all that, they learned from them. They learned from Africans. Africans, and decided, okay, why not copy what they've been doing to better our country, and since then, basically that's where they got the idea of having roads and and other stuff. It was all because of what they saw when they went there to Africa and what they seen Africans doing, with their country.
That's interesting. I know when you look at a lot of China, Asian nations, for that fact, a lot of them have a foothold in Africa, to where a lot of their produce is being brought in from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of their food and crops and stuff is being brought in from Africa. And this is why you have all the nations at this point trying to have the upper hand in Africa, while they got us hating Africa.
Yep.
It's the only land that everybody really wants. You know what I'm saying? Don't nobody want America. America is a whore.
Mm-hmm.
Foreigners come to America to get their money and go back. That's what you do with a whore. You do what you need to do, then you leave. That's what they
Yep.
do. They get the money and they go back home. America has nothing to offer the world.
Nope. None at all.
No resources.
Mm-mm. I don't call. I stopped calling. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Brother E, but I stopped calling America Babylon, and I just been calling America a whore. You know, it's what she is.
Yep. All the nations can come in, right, and get what they need to get and go. Do it, go and, you know, treat America bad and still get what they need to get, and America love them for it. We the only people America hate, and we the only people love America.
Yep.
See? Because hoes hate who love them. Hoes hate real
Hey.
Hoes hate real love. They despise it. We the only people who really love this nation. White people don't even really love this nation like they say they do.
Nope. Mm-mm.
Not more than us. Hell, when the prophets tell you you love something, you love it. And they told us for our hatred, for our love, they've given us hatred. See, y'all think I'm talking bad, but what do the Bible call Babylon the Great? A whore that sits on many waters, right?
Yep.
So why y'all mad at me for calling her a hoe?
Right. Well, she literally controls the whole world.
And she a rich hoe too.
Mm-hmm. And a stank one too. A stank.
Yep. With everybody. Just dallying, I'm telling you. But we gotta quit loving her, man. We gotta stop loving her. You know, and I think this indigenous belief, I think it's an attack. Honestly, bro. I think it's an attack because it's simple to look into this and understand the true connection. So why do you have those of our people mixing it up? It's just like I don't know if you've seen when I showed the first video. There was this older gentleman, right? This documentary back in the 80s called Black Slaves, Red Masters. Turbo, there was this dude, right? Older elder brother. He was one quarter black, 3/4 Indian. 3/4 I think he was Cherokee. I forget what tribe he was. Right? And you can look at him and tell he was mixed. Right? One quarter black, 3/4 Indian. 3/4 Indian. So that means he's mostly Indian, right?
Yep.
Why do we have niggas look like you and me saying they ain't got no African blood in them? They full-blooded Indian.
Bruh. Exactly.
But they don't like to use DNA.
Yeah, exactly. They run from blood tests. But if you put any of them on child support, I bet you they gonna ask for a DNA test.
I don't know why they didn't look. If somebody's indigenous, right? If you indigenous and somebody try to pin a baby on you, don't even go get a DNA test. Just go into your records. Go into your Creek records or your Cherokee, whatever records. Right? Since you don't go by DNA, go grab a picture of your great granddaddy lone wolf. Cause that like one dude go get a picture of lone wolf and put it up next to the baby and see if they got the same forehead. Stupidity. Like one dude say his great granddaddy was an Indian. They always got a great granddaddy that's an Indian chief. Right. Never a regular nigga. Never a regular just rode the horse. You know, it's always an Indian chief. See? And it's always a somebody that don't look like them. Unless you want to claim the mixture. Like I said, I'm not denying nobody's connection and the acknowledgement of the connection. But it's the other claims, you know, the we ain't African, the slave trade didn't exist. America is the homeland, right? If we're indigenous to America, that means America is the promised land, right?
Right.
Nobody wants this land. It's falling apart. Most of the water in the Southwest, Colorado and all them places, most of the water is drying up. Why you want a land that's drying up?
Right. I got a better one. Why you want a land that is literally sinking to the bottom of the ocean?
No, you can have it.
Right.
Y'all can have it. What America give the world? Crude oil. Everything we have is imported. America don't have no resources.
Nope. We ain't even got spices. Nothing but unseasoned food.
Yeah. So nothing don't taste the same no more. Nothing tastes good no more.
Oh, you can't eat anything. You can't drink anything. It's just
like, damn.
You can't even cook with sink water. You know, they got so much metals and bacteria, and you know, it's just this country does not properly filter their water.
Yep. Yep. All the bloodshed. They still finding slave remains. You know, they to this day they finding slave remains. By people asking you where the ships and all this kind of stuff. Just go look that stuff up, man. Y'all telling me y'all done debunked all of that? It's a list of over 50. A list. Well, I know off the top, it's a list of over 70 of them that they've been finding all throughout the Americas. You know, not just the United States, but
Canada.
From mostly Jamaica, the Americas,
South America, and all the
Yeah. some on the coast of America, Alabama, Florida, New York. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all just debunked all of them, huh? Or they'll tell you those was all white people coming over here from Europe.
If that's the case, then why are you burying them there?
Exactly.
Why bury them then if it's just Europeans coming over from across the seas to America?
Yeah, why you bury them, and when we find them, we discover that they the remains of black slaves. Where the ships that brought all the white people over?
Right. Where's the evidence of white slavery at? Y'all said y'all were in chains. Where's that at?
Where the ships that brought the white people over? You show me that, and then the slave ships is next to them. Taste is food. Yep.
Yep.
Wow, that's powerful. Micah 6:14. Thou shalt eat, but not be satisfied.
Mm.
It's like, damn, man, ain't nothing good no more, man.
No, everything is artificial, fake, 3D printed.
Damn, man.
Right.
Kids be wanting to go places, and I go, but some places don't be good, man.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
I had enough of fast food. Yeah, the only time I do eat out, I'm only eating at a Jamaican restaurant because that's literally like the best thing here in America.
Mm.
Is a Jamaican restaurant. Like I eat for my own people. I trust my own people. I only eat from them.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. And eating naturally. They have their own spices they get from their country.
Yeah.
That's why I only stick with Jamaican food, Caribbean food only.
Say, what can we eat? Well, you can do what Turbo said, or you can do like me, man. I like to barbecue.
Yep, cook your own food. Yep.
I like to smoke my own meats. I haven't got the kind of smoker I want to get yet, but I'm working on it.
I want to start smoking. I want to learn how to barbecue better.
I'm gonna tell you, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do. As complicated as people might make it seem, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do, bro. Trust me.
And cause you a barbecue master, bro.
No, I ain't. I like to do it. I mean, I be having my good days and my bad days, you know what I'm saying? But my wife be seasoning. She's seasoning, and she'll even get out there and do it. She'll get out there and do it. But that's the best thing, man. Get you a smoker, get you a grill, because you can stretch food like that too. You know what I mean? So if you put your brisket on there or something, man, you can stretch that out. You know, anything you smoke, barbecue, you can stretch it. Do a lot of different stuff with it. He said, eat like Dane and his companions did in Babylon. The meat isn't what we think it is. Yeah.
That's true. And check this out too.
Yeah.
America does not have that many animals for the meats that we have throughout all the grocery stores across America. We do not have that many animals. But you know what America has plenty of? Us.
Factories.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think so many of our our own kids, women going missing in mass numbers? Why do you think our brothers out here, when we get, unalived, deleted, where do you think they take our bodies to? Our organs. They still do it to this day.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it's it's
Yep.
it's amazing. Some of that meat is and that's why, like, I'm the type, man. I don't need a large variety of stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I tell my wife sometimes don't get certain things because I don't trust a lot of boneless shit, man. They put taking the bones out of everything and boneless this and boneless that. It's like, what is that, like a convenience to me? You making it convenient to me? I'm too lazy. People too lazy now to, eat meat with the boneless wings. Right?
Right.
It's not a boneless wing, man. That's a
3D printed wing. Like,
a boneless wing, man. It's not even, but the convenience, right? You're gonna take the bones out so you don't have to worry about taking the bones out yourself. It's like, I need that bone because that let me know, at least, I'm comfortable with that. Okay, it's got a bone in it, so it's somewhat real, I guess.
it tastes better with the bone in.
Or get you whole chickens, you know what I'm saying? Buy you a brisket, you know what I mean? You know what a brisket look like? Whole chickens, you know what I'm saying? Or if you buy the parts, get the whole parts. Don't get the boneless thighs. Get the thighs yourself and then debone them yourself. You know what I'm saying? Get a raw bones to your dog. Don't give your dog cooked bones. Give them raw bones. They love that. But yeah, man. Cause shoot, even these dogs getting diabetes and joint pain. Like, what the hell, man? The dog
Getting human pain. Like,
it's something wrong with this food, man. How your dog got arthritis?
And then check this out too. When you look at our foods here. Now, I remember when I was younger, I used to see a lot of things, like pay attention to all of my surroundings. Like, a kid had no business paying attention to. Like, I used to see, like, our sisters, like, thick, and then I look at all these other groups of women, nothing there. All of a sudden, now they got the bodies of a queen, of a black woman. Why? Why do you think that is? How do you think they got that?
Telling you, man, they can create food that attacks certain parts of your genetics and all this kind of stuff, man. These
Yep.
people are diabolical. They are diabolical. Because you are right.
They can't do anything. They can't do anything without our melanin. We are the number one source for them.
Man, I'm telling you, it's crazy, boy. It's like you got women who, you know, races of women. They women, all they women built like popsicles. And now you look up, they top models and, you know, all this stuff, surgery and all that, you know, but, you know, it is what it is. Every race got they sense of beauty as well. So I ain't gonna make it like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
We just the forerunners of it all, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see nobody outdoing us.
We the originals of it. I mean,
We just
that's
hurting right now. We hurting right now, you know. But the Most High say He gonna give us beauty for our ashes.
Yep.
You know, so let's get ready for that, man. But on that note, I'm gonna shut this down, man. I want to thank everybody for your time. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, T.I.R. Talk Show and Fellowship, as well as Resurrecting the Truth. Y'all know how we do. Don't forget about TrueHebrew.com, the freshest Hebrew brand in the land. Go over there and check that out. Give us some feedback. You know, appreciate that in advance. You got anything, bro?
My last comments will be shalom to all of the 12 tribes scattered abroad, the 12 tribes of the northern kingdom and Africa. You know, shalom to the ones that are in the background, like in the live watching, not commenting. If you are new here, you know, shalom to you. Welcome if this is your first time. You know, we're all about scripture here. We're all about laughter, peace. You know, it's a vibe to be here. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe. You know, follow us for more of this truth. Thank y'all for your time. Thank you, Brother Ebri, for having me on here. I wish I would have joined earlier, but better late than not showing up at all. So I appreciate you for having me on here, and thank you to the Most High Yah for allowing me to meet you brothers, Ibri, Josiah, Kadar, son Judah, sons of Elohim, Godfather D, brother T, Yash, Yanakota, and to the other brothers that were here before me, you know, that is in the truth, meaning the same thing that we talk about. Shalom to y'all. My final comments will be Shalom Israel. These are the time that we're in now. This is the time to be excited. Look at all that's going on in the world around you. We are in that divine era where the Most High is revealing the prophecies mentioned in the Bible. We're seeing them now. Our curses are lifting up, and they are going on to our oppressors, the colonizers, the heathens, the serpent seed. This is exciting to see. And with all that being said, love y'all, stay prayed up, and peace and blessings. Shalom.
D, bro. Much love to you, man. Appreciate that. Some encouraging words. I'm gonna just end by saying, y'all, let's just, how can I say this? The Bible talks about rumors in the last days. And I really believe that teaching that we are indigenous to America is a rumor, and it's a distraction. It's not even a strong distraction. You know, all it takes is, you know, a little more research and you'll see the connection and be able to come to the proper conclusion. If your heart is desired and set on the Most High and his truth, then you can see that. But if it's not, then it's going to be turned with all these different falsehoods and different winds of doctrine, because that's what that is. So y'all already know how we do. We're going to stay on guard for our people. Much love to y'all. Shalom. Thank y'all once again. See y'all on the next one. Peace.